All right, hello and welcome to this training. As you can see from the title, what we're going to be covering today is the only way to build focus that actually works. And as you can see from the overview, what we're going to be talking about more specifically is first the overview itself, the escape reflex, attention progressive overload, the focus conditioning protocol, the review, and your action items for the day or the next few days. Now, before we get started, if you want to work with me one-on-one on any of this or any other aspect of your life, meaning health, wealth, love, or self, then make sure to book a call from the link in the description. Now, with that said, let's start and talk about the escape reflex. So most people sit down to work, they last about 6 minutes, and then they grab their phone and figure that they're just not wired to concentrate. And I get why that story sticks. It's also wrong. And once you see why, you can't really go back to believing it. So let's go after that story first, the one where you're just not a focused person. It treats your attention like your eye color. It's just something you got at birth and you're stuck with for good. Believe it for long enough and you actually stop signing up for anything that asks for real concentration at all. Now, calling it your wiring is awfully convenient. If you were born this way, then there's nothing to fix and no work to do. And since you never actually put the belief to the test, well, it never gets disproven. But the thing that kills that excuse is that you can probably lock into a movie for 2 hours or a video game, for example, or talk with someone you care about for 2 hours, no problem at all. It's the same brain, it's the same person, completely different result. So you know how to be focused, you know how to pay attention, you know how to concentrate. It's just the things that you're doing that are different, right? The only thing that changed is that none of these things ever bored you. The movie, the video game, talking with a specific person, those might not be boring. And that's why you pay attention, right? Now, look at what that movie and game thing is actually telling us. It's telling us that your focus breaks the second the work stops being quote unquote fun. Right when the task gets dull or you hit something you don't know how to do, that's when you finally break that focus, right? Your mind goes looking for the door within seconds. And that timing is the whole tell, in my opinion. The way the urge to bail turns up right as things get hard. What's really going on is your brain trying to get away from discomfort the instant it basically feels it. Boredom, confusion, same problem with no obvious next move. It all gets treated like a tiny emergency that you've got to escape. And once you call it discomfort, well, the foam stops being the real problem. It's just the easiest way out of the room. Take it away and people still find a snack or a chore or another task or some so-called research that's really just running. Thing is, that easy way out gets easier every single time you actually take it. Each quick hit of something new teaches your brain to expect a little reward the moment things go a bit boring. And if you do that for a few years, a plain hour of real work starts to feel almost unbearable. And that craving for a reward the second things go flat is really exactly why flipping between tasks feels productive when it really isn't. You bounce across 5 things, you feel busy, you feel the effort. Meanwhile, the one task that needed real depth and needed to get done never actually got touched. So there's one more trigger hiding in all that switching, and it's the sneaky one nobody really talks about. Half the time, it isn't even boredom. People just hit a spot where they don't know the next move, the work goes a little foggy, and that blank feeling reads as a fair reason to walk away. And not knowing the next step disguises itself essentially as a distraction every time. You feel the pull towards your phone, and you go blame your willpower. Truth is, the work just got a bit unclear and your mind grabbed the closest excuse to leave. But that blank, foggy feeling is the one thing almost nobody can really sit in for more than a few seconds. Not being able to stand boredom is, I think, one of the biggest hidden reasons focus falls apart. We've trained ourselves to treat one dull moment like a problem that we have to fix this very second. If you stack all those triggers up and you get one little loop running the whole thing, I call it the escape reflex. Discomfort shows up, you essentially feel the urge to escape, you give in, you get that hit of relief, and your focus comes out a notch weaker than it was before. And the sneaky part of that loop is the relief sitting at the end of it, because every escape pays you back right now, this second, and that instant payoff is really what keeps you running it again. Your brain feels the relief, files it as a win, and then takes away one lesson that leaving felt good. Now, once you watch the loop play out like that, your current attention span suddenly makes sense, right? And you realize it isn't permanent. Whatever you can focus for today is just a read on how you've been training yourself day after day for years. For most people, that number has been sliding downwards for a decade, one escape at a time, with nobody really keeping score. Every escape is basically one rep in the wrong direction, and they pile up into the attention span you've got right now. Stay with a hard thing, and you bank a rep for focus. Give in, and you bank one for escaping. 10 little escapes a day works out to a few thousand reps a year, nearly all of them teaching you to basically leave the task that you're doing right now for something else, something a bit more stimulating or fun. And there's good news in here. Even if it doesn't feel like it at first, you trained into this attention span by accident, one skipped rep at a time without ever really deciding to. And that also means it answers to deliberate practice the same way any skill you've ever picked up did. So building a better one on purpose is really the whole idea here. And it's exactly where most advice gives up on you. Sticking your phone in a drawer or using fancy timers or the perfect playlist, all of that just makes focusing easier for a minute. It's all treating symptoms of the problem rather than the root of the problem. None of it really trains the real thing, which is staying put when work turns hard. Now, those little helpers aren't necessarily useless, and I'm not telling you to throw them out. They lower the friction sitting around the work for sure, but they just never touch the muscle that keeps you in the seat once the boredom kicks in. They never really, as I said, look at the core issue. And that muscle, the one that keeps you sitting there, is really what the rest of this whole training comes down to. There's a way to train it on purpose, the same way you'd build any other kind of strength. And that's where we're going in next. So with that said, let's talk about attention progressive. Now, picture someone walking into a gym for the very first time. Nobody hands them the heaviest bar in the building and asks them to basically rip it off the rack, right? But that's exactly what we do with focus. Sitting down after years of scattered attention and expecting 4 clean hours of focus on command. It doesn't work like that, right? Hold on to that gym picture. It runs through this whole section. Focus works like a muscle under load, and it grows the same slow, unglamorous way that strength does. You take on a bit more than you're used to, you recover, and next time you can handle a bit more, and you do that over years. Expecting 4 hours on day one is the exact reason people quit and then label themselves broken. They reach for a load they were never really ready for, they fall apart around minute 20, and then call it proof that they're hopeless. Start that same person at 15 minutes and they'd have walked away feeling capable instead. So it's really about expectations here. The real mechanism is almost dumb in how simple it is. You pick one task, you shut off the easy exits, and you stay put a little longer than it feels comfortable. Then the urge to bail shows up, you turn it down once, and you do the same thing tomorrow. And here's the part I really want you to slow down on. The timing is really everything. The most valuable stretch of any session is the few minutes right after you want to quit. Everything before that was doing something that still felt okay. So the comfortable stretch at the start barely counts as training. It's easy, it's pleasant, and it builds almost nothing. The work that actually changes you really starts the moment boredom or frustration shows up. That moment of restlessness is the rep that pays. 10 minutes right there beats 2 easy hours earlier in the day. That uncomfortable stretch is really the only part your brain actually adapts to. And once you know the after the urge rep is really what counts, the real question is how you run a session, and people fall into 3 styles, right? One's comfortable, one's forced, and one's the one you actually want. They look almost identical on the outside though. So the comfortable style is the one most people slip into without ever realizing. You work right up until the first real urge to stop, and then you stop. You never spend a second under the load that would actually grow your focus. Then there's the forced focus, where you chain yourself to a fixed block no matter how you feel. It does build more than coasting does, but push it too hard too often and you start dreading the desk. You start dreading the work because you're forcing yourself to do it. And within a couple of weeks, you basically quit the whole thing altogether. Then the fix for both is really the third style, adaptive focus. And it's the one I'd bet everything on. You push a little past your breaking point, then you nudge that point further out week by week. You get real growth without really crashing every session and quitting in week 2. And this only works once you know where your breaking point actually sits today. So for the first few sessions, just notice the minute you usually want to quit. That number is just your starting line, and you push a hair past it, a few minutes past it. Pushing just past that line and no further is really what keeps this going for months. You grow without burning out and bailing by week 2, because one small win you can basically repeat daily, and it takes you further than one brutal session you never touch again. So adaptive focus finally gives you something real to actually grow, and it helps to picture 2 separate dials, not one. So duration is how long you stay on a single task. Depth is really how fully your head stays inside it while you're there. And this is what people miss when they used forced focus. For most of that time, they're not really in the task itself. They're not really paying attention. They're forcing themselves to sit at that desk and try to work, but in reality, they're not doing anything productive. So those two come apart way more often than most people think. And I think that gap is where most fake productivity lives. Someone sits at the desk for 3 hours while checking their phone every few minutes, long duration, almost no depth, and the output gives them basically away every time. Right? They don't really produce anything in that time. They're not really concentrated. They're not really actually focused. That kind of shallow stretch can feel busy and produces almost nothing worth keeping. The person stands up drained and somehow empty-handed. So 45 genuinely unbroken minutes of real focus will always outproduce those 3 hours, right? Always. Because in those 3 hours, while you can brag to your friends that you've done 3 hours of quote-unquote focus, you didn't really produce much. So what you're chasing is both dials climbing together. Longer stretches held more fully week over week, and a good month takes someone from 20 shaky minutes to a clean, unbroken hour. And so you have to measure it so that you can actually watch it happen. Now, none of this means much without any real numbers. So here's a run you can actually follow. Start at 20 minutes for the first 3 days, move to 30 through the back half of week 1, hit 45 in week 2, and 60 in week 3, and then land around 75 to 90 by week 4. The only rule that matters is that the time has to be genuinely unbroken. Now, unbroken is exactly where people cheat without admitting it, right? So you need to sit near your work while most people sit near their work while their mind drifts off every couple of minutes, and that earns you nothing, right? Only the minutes where you're genuinely locked in get to count towards the total. So holding yourself to unbroken time gets way easier with the one tool I want you using from day 1, which is the distraction tally. You keep a single sheet of paper next to you. You can put it on your desk as you work. And every time you feel the pull to switch, you grab your phone or get up for a snack, you make one mark and you just stay put. That's it. That's the whole exercise. Now that one mark turns an invisible reflex into something you can actually see, and the urge stops being some force that just happens to you. It's a tick on a page now, and you can actually count them at the end of the day. Now, counting the urges does something genuinely motivating over the next few weeks. The marks start thinning out. They become less and less, or they get easier to brush off when they do come. And by week 3, you're looking at proof in your own handwriting that the training is actually working. So with that said, let's cover the focus conditioning protocol. So by now you can probably feel the catch, which is that raw willpower falls apart inside a life built to pull you away. Everything in our day-to-day lives is really built, engineered to pull our attention away. Why? Because our attention equals money. So you can't out-muscle surroundings that train distraction into you all day long. So instead of leaning on willpower, you build a setup that handles the 4 things that actually decide a session: the task, the room, the reps, and the recovery. So it starts with picking one clear target before you actually sit down, which is you set a target. Something vague like work on my business or study gives your mind nothing to really lock onto. A real finish line should be concrete, right? It should be measurable. For example, 1,000 words written, one chapter read, the first 10 minutes of the edit done, whatever you're doing, 20 problems solved if you're, solving math problems. A fuzzy intention drains you before you even start. So every few minutes, your mind will have to stop and decide what to do next. And that deciding is its own task. You're essentially doing task switching again because you're moving from doing to deciding what to do. And it burns the energy you wanted for the work. A visible finish line takes all that deciding off the table. So you know the second you're done and you know whether you actually hit it. Most people are surprised how much of the urge to wander really disappears once the target is that clear. Now, with the target set, you clear the easy exits out of the room before you start. The phone goes in another room, the desk gets stripped down to just the task, and you tell the people around you you're unreachable for the next certain amount of time. The whole point is really to make leaving cost something. So a half-second impulse can't really drag you out of the chair. Now, clearing exits also means setting up everything you need before the clock starts. Water, notes, whatever the task calls for. I mean, you should have water next to you at all times. All of it should be sitting ready. And that way you never really get the little gift of an excuse to stand up and fetch something, the excuse to go and get some water. So with a room handled, you add a fixed starting ritual you run the same way every single time. Your mind learns by association. So a repeated opening sequence will start to signal that deep work is actually coming. And believe me that this actually works. Same place, same time, when you can swing it, same short set of moves to begin. So the ritual stays deliberately tiny, a few moves and nothing more. You do a couple of things that basically become your ritual for stepping into deep work. You clear the desk, you write your one target at the top of the page, you set the timer, you take 5 slow breaths, and you begin right away. All of these can be part of the ritual, and you can make your own. I'm just giving you examples here, but anything that puts you into that mindset of deep work is coming. So for me, a lot of the times it's really just what I said, 5 slow breaths before I work, and I just go. Sometimes I set a timer for the amount of time that I want to work, and the sheet of paper that I put my tally on is always right next to me. And it shouldn't be a drawn out 45-minute morning routine wedged between you and the actual work. So running that same little sequence over and over is really what's going to give you more power later on. The moves stop being random and start acting as a cue that your brain recognizes. And after a couple of weeks, the ritual alone starts pulling you into focus before you've even thought about it. So keeping it short matters also because a long ritual just turns into another way to stall, right? You don't want a whole productivity routine before you actually, get to work. An elaborate setup becomes a respectable looking reason to basically keep not starting. 5 moves and then you're working. 5 seconds, 5, different things you could do. Not even 5 things, you could just have 5 breaths, that's it. And once the work is moving, the real training shows up at the first strong urge to really escape. And that urge is the entire moment everything else was built to get you to. You stay on the task 5 more minutes, and those 5 minutes are the actual rep. Those 5 minutes past the urge are really where the whole thing is won. 5 becomes 10 over a few weeks, 10 becomes 20, and it never has to feel, dramatic. Each time, you basically are proving to yourself that the urge can show up and you can keep working straight through it. So training past the urge has a limit as well. Blowing past it is its own mistake. This was never meant to be you grinding yourself into dust. In fact, if you actually try to do more than those 5 minutes, you're doing yourself a disservice because it becomes another way for you to find an excuse to actually not do the focus session because you know that you can't believe yourself. You can't trust yourself. So when your attention has genuinely collapsed, forcing it back keeps failing. And you'll stop, you'll recover, and you run a fresh session later. So knowing when to stop protects the quality of every rep you've banked because Foggy, half-there repetition trains sloppy focus just as surely as sharp work trains depth. So grinding through a dead session does more damage than walking away and resetting would. And also, if you've told yourself you're going to be focusing for 30 minutes and in reality you do, 65, you can't trust yourself anymore. Anytime you tell yourself, I'm going to focus for 30 minutes, you won't do it. You won't actually start because you'll tell yourself, I always say 30 minutes, but in reality, I always do 2 hours. And then you won't start. So you can't trust yourself. Better to say 30 and actually do 33 than to say 30 and do 2 hours. So this is a risk almost nobody plans for. Every minute of half-focused grinding teaches your mind that sitting there and drifting counts as work. Push through 20 foggy minutes and you've just rehearsed distraction with your full effort behind it. Walking away properly means real rest, the kind that resets you instead of feeding the same urge. So a short walk, some quiet, maybe, getting some food if you need it, a bit of water, a bit of movement, eyes off into the distance. Checking your phone and calling it a break doesn't really count, and you know it. Now, recovering well sets up the last piece, tracking a few honest numbers. After every session, you write down 4 things: the time you planned to focus, the time you actually pulled off, the number of urges you felt, and what you actually produced. Those 4 numbers stop you from grading a session on how it actually felt, and you start grading it on how it actually went, right? So going on feeling alone is where most people misjudge everything. A session can feel like a slog a lot of the times and still turn out excellent work because the page shows you what your mood was hiding. So all of it folds into one plain idea that you can walk out of here with today. You build focus the same way you build strength. You pick a load, you stay under tension, you recover, and you come back a little stronger. So if you want help turning this into an actual setup that actually fits your days, that's exactly what we map out together on a call. So make sure to book a call from the link in the description. With that said, let's cover the review. We went over the overview, we went over the escape reflex, attention progressive overload, the focus conditioning protocol, the review, and finally your action items for the day or the next few days. First, pick one task with a finish line you can actually see before you start. Put your phone in another room and clear the desk down to just that one task, because that ambiguity is really what feeds the urge to wander. So you need to kill it up front. Then watch for the first real urge to escape and treat it as the start of the work, not the end, right? This is the mistake most people do. When they find that urge, they just stop working. That's when the work starts. Stay with a task for 5 more minutes the moment you notice the urge, and put 1 mark on your distraction sheet. Those 5 minutes are the rep that actually builds everything. And then run the week by week progression that I mentioned and track your 4 numbers every session. Push a little past your breaking point each time so that the capacity keeps climbing. And if you want this built around your real days, book a call and we'll map it out together. With that said, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it brought a lot of value. If it did, make sure to subscribe for more of these. If you want this training along with this document, make sure to join the free community from the link in the description. And once again, if you want to work with me one-on-one on any of this, make sure to book a call from the link in the description. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all the support, and I'll see you in the next one.